Hello, 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 hello. It's good to see you. Say hello.
Welcome to the Huskies Hockey Podcast. Weldie back in his captain's chair for the next episode here of the Huskies Hockey Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Andrew, wonderful job on the mini episode, and you nailed it as I was riding the waves of Lake Como with my dad. We figured if we were going to go out, we were going to go out in style.
How was the water?
Oh, chilly.
I would imagine.
It wasn't the best, but we had.
Is all the ice off of Como at this time of year?
A fair amount. There was a couple of times where I rode the waves into a patch of ice, and
see, that's fun.
I got a little bit of a cut from under my right nipple and then down to my left hip. Like it kind of pushed me up against it. That's a visual no one wants. So you're welcome for me putting that out there to everyone.
College, I mean, it's fitting though. College hockey year starts with the icebreaker.
Yeah.
Or in your case, the college hockey season ended with a bit of an icebreaker.
And then the Frozen Faceoff did as well, with the icebreaker breaking me. So
correct.
Well, I mean, first things first, as we do now in these shows.
So we're talking about whiskey today.
Whiskey.
I mean, maybe one of them's George Jones. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe not.
It's some George. I thought it was George Strait, but I still don't think that's right. But George Jones, we're gonna get if we just keep saying George, famous Georges. We'll get
George
we'll
Harrison. I don't think his drug of choice was alcohol, but I mean, maybe
George Garth Brooks, his first name actually being George.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I
thought it was Keith. I thought it was Keith Gaines.
Yeah, Chris Gaines.
Chris Gaines,
alter
that's
ego.
Right. Yeah, Chris Gaines was his alter ego.
Yeah, I don't know what his actual. I would assume his first name is actually Garth. I mean, if your first name's Garth, aren't you going with Garth? Because I think I would.
I would too. And I don't think Garth Brooks's music is. I mean, maybe I don't know if it's streaming only on Amazon. I'd like his stuff is not on Spotify or Apple Music. I know that.
He's like the Metallica of country.
Pretty much.
Very proprietary when it comes to the streaming rights for his music. Yeah. I'm sure he was an anti-Napster guy as well.
But not Chris Gaines, though. Ironically enough. I don't know how that worked out.
Oh, yeah. He kept those two personalities very apart.
Very separate. All right. Here we are heading to New Zealand.
Okay.
For this next whiskey tasting, and anyone who knows me knows that New Zealand is on my bucket list for a country I would like to go to.
As discussed on a previous show, yes.
I was going to say, yeah, we did discuss that because it's further away from Australia than you think.
That's right.
So.
That was one of the Dan Jacobson questions. We've come back to it several times since then. So yeah, Dan Jacobson feeding us content that we return to show after show after show.
Yep. And if I wasn't worried about any DMCA issues, I would start playing some Lord of the Rings Howard Shore composed music right now. Some
plug that
concerning hobbits, for instance.
Yeah.
But I'm
not gonna lie. It right here.
just play it on your own music player, and then just imagine that it's playing in the background. I'm very excited for this, by the way, because it is aged in bourbon casked. So I think the barrel was used for bourbon, and then the barrels are shipped to New Zealand, and then aged for this. So it's going to be interesting.
Very meta.
So
it would be fine if it was a bourbon aged in bourbon.
That's a double oak.
I think it's against the Constitution of Kentucky, I think, to do that.
So here I go. Either that tastes like nothing, or I have a serious alcohol problem. I don't know which.
A wide range there of possibilities.
It's a wide range. No, like literally, this is going down like water, and usually that's one of two things. Yeah, it's either like, ooh, you got to cut back if it's going down that easy, or
this you could have a cold, like a head cold. You just kind of your taste buds are
I've got really chapped lips right now. My lips hurt real bad, as Napoleon once said. But I've got some. I got some. I mean, he might have too. He couldn't take
in the Crusades.
Switzerland.
That's right.
So, I mean, maybe he could have in Elba, but I've got some Aquaphor next to me, so I'll be applying that. So if you accidentally get some lip smacking ASMR from me this episode, I apologize, or you're welcome, I guess. I don't know which one that is. But anyway, when I'm tasting a whiskey, I want to taste something. So I'm going to go, this is going to be a 5-2.
Wow. That's near the bottom.
That is the bottom. That is the
bottom.
Yeah.
I thought that we had one in the 4s, but
we have not. Nope. 5.9 was the Germany one.
So by far, by 0.7.
Yeah. This is, and maybe that's harsh because it's not like I don't like it. It just tastes like nothing. It's just the absence of everything. So like as far as if you're still listening to Lord of the Rings, this is like the Hobbit is what this is. So
I pick up that's supposedly some kind of slight at the Hobbit. I don't know enough about the Lord of the Rings universe to get your where you're going with that, but I picked up some snobbishness, or at least some disrespect. Am I reading that correctly?
I'm still hung up on the fact that like you're familiar with Lord of the Rings. Have you seen the movies?
Never.
Whoa. Wow.
We've been over this. I'm not a high fantasy guy. No interest in that. Game of Thrones. You're building new worlds with different rules. I'm out. I realize that's weird. I just have zero interest in it.
All right. You gotta at least watch Fellowship just to see if it may surprise you.
That's the first one?
That's the first one. Fellowship of the Ring.
Again, I've got a whole spreadsheet of 70s B movies to catch up with. But once I'm done with those, I'll put that on the list.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Yeah. So the first three Lord of the Rings movies are widely regarded as a masterpiece in pretty much every sense of filmmaking. And then a while later, he went back and did 3 movies of The Hobbit, which is like a 200-page children's book that is, set before Lord of the Rings, but it is just bad in pretty much every sense of the word. So,
was Jackson involved with that?
Correct.
So you can't blame different director.
Nope. It was.
What's so bad about it?
I think it was because, like, when New Line Cinema originally announced the Lord of the Rings and doing the books, which again, we talk about people really protective of their work. The Tolkien estate it's the Metallica of high fantasy, maybe even turned up a little bit. But they were really practical with everything. They thought they shot all 3 movies at the same time. They went to New Zealand for the sets. They did the miniatures, which were actually very, very big, but to scale. So it just looked a lot better. Whereas everything was green screen in The Hobbit, and it was just a little more lifeless. The score wasn't as good. So it was just everything about the Lord of the Rings. It was just worse in every sense. The story wasn't as good because they tried to stretch it out into 3 movies when it clearly didn't need it. So they added a bunch of stuff that wasn't really Tolkien. So it was just not ideal.
All right, so do not start with those 3 movies.
You start with the Fellowship of the Ring.
Okay.
Then you go to Two Towers, then you go to Return of the King. And then just also, side note, I know we got a lot to talk about this episode, but I want to get this out of the way here. I know people will say the extended versions. I don't think so. Not as a new person going in. I think it's a little bit too long to do the extended version. It does round out a couple storylines, and I do think the extended versions are good. Now I watch the extended version, but getting into them right now, like just right as the first, watch the theatrical cut. It's
I think that's a good rule of thumb in general. I think there's a reason that they edited those out for the original cut. So I think in general, go with the theatrical cut. When you graduate into the super fandom of that particular movie, then that's when you've seen it 4 or 5 times.
Mm-hmm. Then
I think it's appropriate. You're going to eat that stuff up anyway. But like when Apocalypse Now, when that was the Redux version, they add like an hour of it. Skip that. The original is much better. And that's one where I think that if you buy that, at least DVD 20 years ago when it came out, that one was one where this is the definitive version. No. So in general, I always stick to what was the cut that was released to theaters originally.
Yep. So like I said, you got, and already they're plenty long. So it's not, I mean, all of them are, I think, 2 hours, 45 minutes, 2.5 hours. I mean, they're all in that. I think Return of the King is a little over 3. So I think the extended version is like 3 and 4.5 hours for Return of the King.
It's a long film.
So yeah, but at any rate, I love Lord of the Rings, and but I also read high fantasy too. So,
well
anyway.
aware that I'm in the minority, and if you love it, great. And it is. I will give it the credit. It does have some great set design and production value. That's one where it's like, shots. And again, like Star Wars is in the same thing where it's like I appreciate the artwork. I can't imagine how you would film something like that or stage it, anything like that. So I do have appreciation in that regard.
Fair enough. So, perfect. Let's get started here. Obviously, Frozen Faceoff happened, but first off, we're Huskies podcast, so let's start with kind of big commitment news, where we got a Mr. Hockey finalist committed to St. Cloud State. From St. Thomas Academy, Jackson Rudh ended up committing a forward right-handed shot with some pretty solid stats there in high school. So I imagine he would be coming in probably after a year of juniors. But anytime you have a Mr. Hockey finalist that ends up committing here, I think this is a really solid get for Larson and his staff.
I would agree with that. Some background, 2006 birth. So 18, will be 19. It's actually, we're birthday buddies. Also December 11th. So he was born on my 21st birthday. Ooh. So imagine what I was doing that day. And also he's, he went to Cottage Grove. Me being a Hastings guy, I won't hold him being from Garbage Grove, as we lovingly call them. I won't hold that against him.
Something tells me not so lovingly in real life.
Park was our big rival back then. I don't know if that's the same now. I know that Park has continued. So Rudh plays 3 years for Park and then transfers to St. Thomas. I'm sure there's listeners out there that grumble at that being a trend now in the last 5 to 10 years, especially when kids are transferring to these private schools or just higher end, high profile programs late in their high school career. It is something that wasn't done when we were in high school, for instance, at least not on the scale that it's done now. So that does sadden me a little bit. And just talking to my dad, like Hastings, which when I was in high school, so I graduated 2004. Hastings went 4 straight years, and they straddled the St. Paul Civic Center, the Target Center, and the Axe. So I think it was 98, 99, 2000, 2001. I think the 4 straight that they went. Jeff Tafe, Dan Welch, Ben Tharp was 3 guys that went to the Gophers that were on those teams. Tafe, most notable of those, of that group. But they made the state title game in 99. So a very good AA program for a half decade. And my dad says that they're likely going to be dropping down to single A because they don't have the numbers, and they haven't been competitive for 10 or 15 years. From what I have gathered, Park has been able to withstand the changing demographics with suburbs and attending enrollment and all that better than Hastings has. At least their hockey program is in better shape than Hastings is. Because again, when I was in high school, Hastings was a step or 2 above Park, but Park has surpassed them not only in hockey, but other sports as well. So when I did see that he was originally played at Park and then just the 1 year at St. Thomas, I felt a little bit of a local angle to that as well. But as you mentioned, put up a great year with St. Thomas and just started his USHL career. So we would have watched him in the state tournament a couple of weeks ago. They made it, won their first round game. I don't know if they won 3rd place. They were in the 3rd place game against Edina in the game that Edina versus St. Thomas. People love that 3rd place game, but at least it wasn't the title game, right? But so now after his high school career is done, now he started his USHL career. According to Elite Prospects, just 2 games so far with Sioux Falls. Yeah, I would imagine your timeline is accurate. Probably 1 full year in juniors, and then bring him in, which would be 26, 27. We're looking at bringing him in as a 19-year-old at that point, going to be turning 20. Seems like a reasonable timeline, and for a like you said, Mr. Hockey candidate, good that St. Cloud is able to scoop up these guys, and excited to see him join the fold in not too much longer, a year and a half or so. So excited for that commit.
Oh, that's awesome. Let's talk about the Frozen Faceoff. Last one in attendance for the tournament at the XL Energy Center. And end of an era for conference tournaments here for the conference that St. Cloud State calls home. And for me, my dad as well. Obviously talked about it before, and it wasn't obviously just us that had the tradition, but I know a lot of fans did as well. There was a group of Dan Jacobson, his posse, with a whole list of people that I can't name off the top of my head right now, but they go every year. They dress up as under-supported fan bases. So this year they dressed up as the Arizona Devils, and they had the devil get up and the pitchforks. They all dressed in Tigger costumes when Colorado College made it. They dressed up as Miami Redhawks when the Redhawks made it. So, just kind of fun things like that. They had a big contingency of refs there, probably about 18 or so fans, just all dressed up in ref outfits that had one big block in the sections. They got into it. I don't want to talk about how much money I lost at the dollar game, because that was a sore subject for me and my wallet. I probably lost, I didn't even count it at the end, but I probably lost about $70 on it. And for me to have the bad luck run that I had, and my dad too, he lost a fair amount as well. And, just it felt like one number, the number 3 was coming up all of the time. And we were just giving this number to this, this kid that was with us just annoying to watch him win and watch him gloat. But it was bad luck. He made out like a bandit, and usually what's great about the dollar game is usually by the end of it, it's exciting and you're up a couple of bucks, down a couple of bucks, because you think eventually 1 in 10 chance all the numbers will even out. Not this week. I think 5, there was a glitch in the scoreboard where it always landed on 4 or 6, or apparently 3 all the time now. But it would have been worse if some of those empty netters on Friday's series didn't end up having a 5 in the 10th spot. That would have been made for even worse time. So, but anyway, I had fun overall. I thought the games were, pretty good all around. The championship game really close to being a dud, being down 3-0 going into the third. Even though I thought Western controlled a little bit more of the game, Denver had some swings, but it looks like when that third period happened, Western really finally found the back of the net, and Davis gives up a softie, just a swing and a miss. Kind of reminded me of JoJo's goal in Duluth at Amsoil last year, where it just kind of went right through the glove. A buddy of mine I was with said he must have had Western Michigan plus 1.5 to make sure that game goes into overtime, to make sure Matt Davis can get the payout. So, but even the semifinal game too, Western Michigan against North Dakota. I thought Western Michigan was really in control for most of the game, but North Dakota had a couple of swings, but overall, Western Michigan ends up winning. And Denver, Arizona State, I thought that was a solid game too. So, as far as all the games go, it was solid hockey, and to see Western Michigan come back and then win it in double overtime, it was overall, it was a lot of fun. And I know there was a lot of talk about the attendance on Twitter, and I almost kind of came back, and just because I was just really, like, of course, everyone knew the attendance was this wasn't a shock. This wasn't a surprise. The attendance was going to be bad. That's why they're leaving. And all this talk about how bad the attendance was that I saw on social media, I'm like, yeah, no crap. Like, of course, we all knew this. Let's just talk about the games, move on, and we can get to campus sites here next winter. So, but overall, it was a good time, and a lot of drinks, a lot of libations. Yeah, I ended up actually surprising my dad with wild tickets as well against the Buffalo Sabres. So I got. So we sat in the club level, got to treat him as a thank you for the 24 years of going to this tournament. So I got to thank him, send him us to the club level, saw the Wild beat the Buffalo Sabres 4-1. So overall, it was a wonderful time. And, but you definitely could tell why the tournament is going the way it is, because it's just a shell. Even walking in to the championship game, it's just no atmosphere. There's no fans. The teams, they weren't the right teams. So it was just kind of unfortunate that it went out, but at least I was treated with a good game, and I can't ask for anything more than that.
Yeah, I mean, my main question was going to be about attendance. You kind of covered that already, but just more detail with that. Sure. Other than the Dan Jacobson group, did you see any Arizona State fans? I mean, they screenshotted a group of Western fans. I don't know if that was just the only pack of them there, or were there more of, a negligible presence of Broncos fans, or was it more so in your camp where it's neutral locals who are kind of neutral with their cheering alliance? At least with that championship game with Denver and Western, did you see any discernible fan bases other than the normal crowds, like people like you, that North Dakota, or people that always have gone to the event?
I will say that I thought Western Michigan had more fans, but granted, it mostly was, the band and then that section there. But as far as that section go, I mean, it was probably organized by the Lunatics and everything along those lines. They were loud. You can definitely hear them throughout the arena. So that was good. There were quite a few Arizona State fans, I believe, but they were all like non-college-ish age, or I mean, they were all alum of the my age, upper 35 or older crowd. So yeah, that, and then, you know, I think Western Michigan in general was the favorite of the weekend. After North Dakota was eliminated, I think everyone was just kind of sick of Denver, which is, you know, I can see.
It makes sense.
I am too. So, yeah, you know, props up for the Western Michigan fans who were there. I thought they were loud, and I think they did a really good job being involved in the whole game, even though they were down 3-0. They were still trying to get their team going.
Yeah, so you said that, or at least you implied that your gift of the Wild game is sort of the end of this yearly tradition with your dad of attending. Obviously, this tournament you're not going to be attending anymore, but I think we may have thought about this or brought this up last year. I mean, 2026, we've got a Sioux Falls regional. 2027, we've got a Fargo regional. 2028, we've got a Sioux Falls regional again. Has that been broached as a possible replacement for this event for you and your dad?
It has. We were talking about it as a possibility, and the big hang up, that extra day is actually really a hindrance for us going. Because, I mean, that's an extra hotel night. That is an extra, what do we do in Sioux Falls or Fargo? Now, Fargo might be actually a little more interesting because my dad did his undergrad in Moorhead. So he can take me out to all of his college days and see how things go there. But overall, yeah, it's... You know, I think he'd be interested in it, and he used to go to a lot of Sioux Falls Stampede games. So like the Denny Sanford Arena, he said that's a nice arena to go to. Obviously, I've been to the Fargo for the Fargo Force at Shields Arena. So it has been approached as possibly a replacement. It's just the next week. That extra day is kind of a hindrance because that's an extra day I would have to take off of work. Maybe not if it's a Friday Sunday series. If the Sunday game is, because usually if the Sunday game is like at 2-ish or in the afternoon,
depends. And I think even the regionals, I'm not sure if they have, like, they know. Did we know in advance that the Fargo regional was going to be Thursday, Saturday, or is that announced at the time the brackets are? Which regionals are the Thursday, Saturday? Which regionals are the Friday, Sunday? Because I'm not sure if that's set in stone or not. And again, that would make a big difference because that would be an extra. If it's a Thursday, Friday, or a Thursday, Saturday regional, you'd have to take 2 days off of work. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, thanks, Bob.
Yeah, right.
For that. But because you've got a couple, and your dad's, didn't he? I mean, from South Dakota as well, or lived there too. So I figure he's probably got some inroads with the Sioux Falls community there too, there in Sodak.
That's very true.
So your neck of the woods, well represented in terms of regionals here coming up in the next couple of years. Just throwing it out there might be a good idea if you want to extend the dad-son bonding experience. I
did float the idea also because in 2028, or is it 2027? I think it's 2028. It's in Fargo and Sioux Falls. So if there's a...
that's 28.
Yep.
28.
So
yep.
If there's a... I would imagine they're both going to be on different regionals. It's only a 3.5 hour drive between the two.
That would be the super
That
trip.
would be the super regional. You would maybe we get a hotel in Watertown, like a halfway point.
So you would do Thursday 2 games, Friday 2 games, Saturday 1 game, Sunday.
Yep. I mean, I think we
could write a book about that.
I think we would rent a car.
Can I come?
Miles on that.
I think I want to come.
So I think that would be the way to do it. I don't know. Maybe in my younger days I could handle that much in the car in the road trips, but I don't know about now. But
it would be a long weekend.
It would be,
but I think it would be worth it.
It'd be worth it for a story. So, but yeah, went to Zamboni's, which was Eagle Street. Went to Frank's, which is apparently above Casetta's, which is kind of I didn't know a bar existed up above Casetta's, but that was a really nice kind of place, up a hole in the wall there, with just amazing old fashioned. So I highly recommend that.
I don't know why I don't know about that either. Casetta's is a institution.
Yeah.
There's a little dive bar in the second floor.
In the second floor, yeah. You go upstairs, you go around, and yeah, that was Frank's.
That is news to me. I'll have to check that out. Good old fashions, you say?
Yeah, very good old fashioned. Yep. So,
well, the next time that we have a frozen face-off at the X, I'll be sure to check that out.
Check that out, right? One thing that did really surprise me, they really co-opted and coined the last call in St. Paul shirts. Or the slogan, last call in St. Paul, and they had the logo, and then they had, the 4 teams that represented.
Like the league was like, I saw that as like a hashtag on Twitter, but like the league was like putting some money into some merch. With that.
They were, but not in sense of like actually stocking it. And that's what really surprises me is that you have, what the ticket sales are going to be, and bad. And you still like, you should be able to project, and maybe even like more than project how much, because of just, it's the last one, but they ran out of like souvenir pucks very early. And that's always kind of a big, souvenir item in general. Obviously North Dakota shirts went very quickly. They went right away. But even their regular, last call in St. Paul shirts, they were, they only had select sizes available towards the end. And I understand not wanting to put a ton of it and lose and take a bath in it, but I was just surprised that they felt like they could have made a little bit more money if they did a little bit better stocking of inventory.
Yeah, because we know that they need to upgrade the NCHC TV capabilities. So we need some money saved for that purpose. So, yeah, they need to make up some revenue somehow. Missed opportunity, according to Weldie here.
How was your kind of experience watching it? Did it feel dull, lifeless? Did Starman bring the heat? How did it feel with the games?
I didn't watch the Denver Arizona State game because I was working. I only watched a little bit of the North Dakota Western game. I watched most of the Denver Western game. Starman was on his normal shtick. Nothing too. I'm trying to think of like memorable anything. I'm drawing a blank. It was more. This was the end of an era, and it's when we think about. So I never made it. I made it to one Final Five, the WCHA. And that was just one game of the Final Five. It was, I think, 2007 when the North Dakota played and beat St. Cloud. I think it would have been the early game on Friday. I think it was like 6-3. That was the only time I went to the Final Five. But I went to, 3 or 4 of the frozen face-offs. And even that Final Five that I went to, which 2007, if you look, and I've done research about this, I want to bring this up in a show in the next few weeks, attendance. 2007 was like the peak of attendance, not only with WCHA, like St. Cloud, but like the Final Five in particular peaked that year. Very good year for sports attendance in college hockey. And I just remember that was we were in the nosebleeds and it was packed on a Friday afternoon for the Final Five. None of the frozen face-offs that I went to, which none of those are at the X. I only went to the ones at Target Center. So I must have went to 3 of them. None of those even came close to anything approaching like that sort of atmosphere. And it's a difficult task to try to replicate that when you don't have like the Gophers, especially them, at a Final Five, but also like Wisconsin, like Michigan Tech fans would always show up, no matter if they were there or not. It was never going to be the same in a smaller league that didn't have the biggest schools there, namely the Gophers. And so it always kind of felt like a cheap replacement for it. And then in the last, like we mentioned last week, since COVID, for instance, it's just been, you're not even at a point where you can put 8,000 in the building in a North Dakota game. And that final didn't even crack 6,000, which I'm pretty sure was the lowest reported attendance of any of the games in the history of the event. So yeah, I mean, clearly it's time, and it probably was a season or two late to shut the door here. And I saw some folks on Twitter saying, what if this was at Lawson instead of at the X, that championship game? Certainly you'd think that would have been a much better, certainly in-person product, but even watching on TV would have been greatly enhanced over the version that we ended up seeing play out there at the X. So yeah, I don't know if you have anything. I'm sort of rambling now. As being someone that went to so many of the Final Fives, I'm sure you can vouch for my hunch that this event never stacked up. It never really even had a chance to stack up to how special those events were.
Yeah, I think the big thing was losing the Gophers. And I think it boils down to, and I'm going to use a pro wrestling analogy, is that you look at the great rivalries in pro wrestling, face versus heel. You need a heel. You need a villain. And as, much as I hate North Dakota, if you poll a majority of St. Cloud State fans, they would say Minnesota. But you look at, number one for Minnesota Duluth, you probably say Minnesota. Number one for North Dakota, Minnesota. Wisconsin, Minnesota. And you get all of these, not only as a chance to cheer for your team, but then the other game is cheering against your most hated team, the one you hate with a passion a lot more than anyone else, over decades of history, and then trying to replace that with, teams you're more apathetic about. I think that's the thing, is that's the kind of the crux of it, is that you have less villains to cheer for. And it was a good chance that Minnesota was going to make that tournament. And, we've got a chance to go against them and be happy and really cheer for Denver going up against Minnesota. And then having, all of that kind of just get stripped away, like it did, to something that even I didn't really think that would happen. I didn't think there'd be enough Big Ten teams even interested in hockey, and really only needed one. But it's, like I said, I don't think it really had a chance. And I think after COVID, that was kind of the final death knockout blow of like this. It's just not sustainable. I think there was a chance there at the beginning. It's like, because I think they got about 10, 11,000 for some of them. And it's like, maybe this can, but after COVID, it never really recovered.
I did see that Schlossman did a piece about kind of the history of dating back to the Final Five, which the first neutral site was in 88 at the St. Paul Civic Center. I didn't know this. They had the Final Five take place the Sunday and Monday after the state tournament. Can you imagine that for a weekend of hockey? Like, have the state tournament and then you go with the Final Five. And that was the format for like 90 till 92 or 93. It was weird. It went to like the Bradley Center. Milwaukee had a couple of them. And then Target Center had a few. That was when you went to your first one. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Would have that been 99 or 2000?
99, 2000 season.
Okay.
So 2000 was my first one. The X was just being finished.
Do you remember how, like, because I would remember like the Red Baron Final Five was an XL Energy Center event Do you remember that first one? Was it packed to the gills? I know it's 25 years ago. Do you remember the atmosphere of that first one?
Yeah, I mean, the atmosphere still was incredibly good because, North Dakota was massive at that point, and Minnesota played in the play-in game, or Wisconsin, because I think Wisconsin at that point had Reinprint and Heatley on the same line, and I think they only lost a couple of games that season. They were probably some of the best college hockey players I've ever seen in person. And I just remember because Minnesota ended up winning in the play-in game on Thursday, and just the atmosphere, even walking out of the Target Center, of everybody just amped up. That everyone was like, bring on the Badgers. We got the Badgers. Like, they got no chance. Bring them on. We're not scared of them. And just the atmosphere of everyone just riled up about it. And then you got the North Dakota fans in St. Cloud State as that they were starting to be up and coming here. That was the early game there, and just, didn't work out very well for St. Cloud State that game. They kind of got shellacked. But there was one guy heckling Scotty Meyer behind him like the whole game, and he was just cracking up all the sections around him. And it was just, I mean, even then at the Target Center, you could tell it was like, they've got something here. And that's why, Dad and I was like, we should, if you're interested, we can keep doing this as your birthday present. And I'm like, yeah, let's keep doing it.
Who won that Wisconsin Badgers game, or the Badger Gopher game?
Oh, the Badgers did.
Yeah, I'm looking it up now. 5-3, and then North Dakota beats Wisconsin 5-3 for the championship.
What was it, like 7-2 North Dakota over St. Cloud?
I can check that out here. I was on the Wisconsin page. Give me a second. That would have been St. Cloud's first. I mean, they had the fluky NCAA berth in the late 80s, but this would have been their first at-large bid. Yeah, 7-3.
7-3.
And then that was Dakota ended up winning the national title that year. That was the first of two title games with them in BC. They flip-flopped winning. Each of them won one of those. But so then the next year would have been the first year at the X.
And that was St. Cloud State's victory.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. So yeah, you spanned the major history of that tournament, like with it peaking there in the mid 2000s, especially.
And on the Jumbotron too, they had like a flashback of all the winners, from the tournament starting in 2000 or 2001. It started because at the X, and then on from the tournaments for the NCHC. Or the WCHA, then NCHC. So it was kind of interesting to see that of all the team pictures with the trophy on the ice.
Yeah, fun. It's like I said, it's bittersweet because we can remember how college hockey was positioned to have an event like this work so well. And it seems so foreign now. And you can debate if there were mistakes, if you consider them mistakes going away from the model, the conference setup that was, 10 plus years after the death knell for such a neutral site tournament in the Twin Cities. But that might be a rant for a different day. But it's nice to go back to memory lane. And for someone like you who's been to so many of these, it's a new era for you and Dad, finding another event to make an annual trip to.
Yeah, exactly. As you were talking, I decided to bring up that 6-2 game on March 16th, 2007 that you went to.
Okay. I didn't look at it. It's good.
So we got a random box score time. It's been a while since we've done a random box score.
Remind to remember. So if I can remember how I thought the game went,
I feel like real quickly, guess who the referee was?
Don Adam.
Derek Shepard.
That's my second guess.
Attendance 17,511.
It's pretty nice.
So,
Was this the year? First of all, did St. Cloud? They played in the play-in game the day before. I'm going to say they beat Duluth, but I'm not positive.
Nope, they did not play in the playing game. This was the 3 overtime Duluth series.
That's right. Maybe that was.
So they beat
the
Duluth in 3 overtimes.
Oh, that's right. It must have been 06. It was, yeah. I think it was the same. It was right before the 8-7 game. I think going into that game is when they played Duluth in the play-in game. So I'm getting my years mixed up here.
Yep, that's correct. Yeah, that 8-7 game they played Duluth. I think they won like 5-1 or something like that.
Something like that.
Duluth.
Yeah, no, that's right. Because St. Cloud would have been like the 2 or the 3 seed that year, and so they wouldn't have had to play the play-in game. But from what I might be way off. This would have been. I think it was like 6. Was it? Did you say it was 6-2? Because I think it was tied somewhat early in the second period, and then North Dakota just ran over them. Like it was close up until a point early in the second, and then North Dakota took over. That's my recollection. Very fuzzy recollection of that game.
Yes, I would say that is correct.
And I couldn't tell you. Like I said, we were way up there in terms of this. I couldn't tell you who scored those goals. If I was going to guess, I'd guess Nodal, maybe.
Correct.
Lash.
Nope.
So it was 6-2. You said so. We're looking for 2 St. Cloud goals.
Correct. Yep.
And Nodal had one of them.
Nodal had one of them.
That would have been like Justin Fletcher.
Nope. A goal scorer. I'll give you one more guess.
I thought was Rowe.
Nope.
I don't think Rowe wasn't there yet. Yeah, I think he was there the next year. Another scorer, Andrew Gordon.
Correct, Gordo.
Okay.
Gordo on the power play. I'll tell you who scored the first goal. You can guess who got the assists. Okay, for North Dakota.
Was it Duncan?
Taves got the goal. Who got the assists?
Oshie and Duncan.
There you go.
How many of those how many goals was that pairing involved in? That line?
Really, actually, just that. 2, I guess. Later in the second period, when they really started to pull away, Taves from Oshie and Genoway.
Was that Duncan's Hobey year? I know he was somewhere in that.
I'm pretty sure it was 2007.
Yes, it was.
No, it was Chris Vandevelde,
who only scored against St. Cloud. It seemed like
pretty much his second and third goals of the year came about 3 minutes apart. 1-1. Taves, and then Nodal scored at the 4:09 mark, and then after that, Vandevelde. This is in the second. Vandevelde 5:19. Vandevelde 8:43. Gordo on the power play makes it 3-2 at 10:06. But then just right after that, Taves from Oshie and Genoway, Watkins from Vandevelde, and Zach Jones, and then Porter from Kipe and Fabian.
Yeah, Vandevelde had a good career. He ended up scoring 52 goals with North Dakota for 4 years. But his first year, that 06-07 year, just 3 goals, and all of them were against St. Cloud.
Was this the game where Robbie Bina got injured?
I don't remember that.
Might have been. He got hip checked and flipped over and landed on his head and had to get spinal cord surgery.
You saying Genoway makes me think of the Aaron Marvin.
That was the Aaron Marvin.
Genoway.
Yeah, that wasn't
a Frozen or a Final Five, but no. I'm sure North Dakota fans don't forget that.
Maybe not. No, Bina got a holding call in the third period at the 17:36 mark, so I can't imagine it was this game. But that happened Robbie Bina got hit and injured, and I think he was out the whole next year too. But
these are some names. These are some names in North Dakota lore. We'll probably maybe touch on that a little bit, North Dakota lore, in a later segment.
I wonder what we're going to talk about there.
We could that could have been a perfect segue, but no, it's North Dakota news. They're backloaded on this show.
Yeah, let's kick them to the back, even though I just spent 10 minutes talking about who played for them recently, or not even recently. That was 20 years ago. Good Lord. Let's talk regionals. First off, congratulations. I know you don't want to, pat yourself on the back too much, but your bracket was correct, as it always is. I wanted some chaos. I wanted some interestingness. I wanted more Big Ten teams in to really screw up everything. I was hoping for it, and it kind of felt like everything went into place. Take your victory lap.
I will. I thought I probably was overthinking it. I probably could have gotten the show over in 15 minutes because there wasn't, and I didn't see any other brackets that were different than that, as it turned out. Not surprising. Of the 4 years, it turns out to have been the easiest bracket to make. And yeah, as you were saying, this is why I don't really stress out about the brackets in advance. Like McMahon has been doing a bracket since the first week of the year. Like he chalks up 16 teams and puts them into the regionals. And he's like, we've got Manchester. Well, New Hampshire's in the field this week, so they're a host. So we got to deal with that. That kicks out BC. And then the last couple of weeks, it looked like if Michigan was going to make the tournament, and 2 Big Ten teams in the 4-seed band and 2 Big Ten teams in the 1-seed band, and are you going to screw over BC? I'm reminded of a great Calvin Coolidge quote. Said, I'm paraphrasing here, but you've got 10 problems rolling at you down the road. 9 of them will go into the ditch before they get to you. That's a good motto when it comes to bracketology, because you can sense these potential problems, but most often than not, they deal with them themselves. And you actually don't have to grapple with them as much. It would have been interesting to see what would have happened if Michigan made it. Because like I think I had tweeted, they would have either had to have BC not play the lowest seed, or they'd have to have a first round matchup against Big Ten teams, which is something they haven't done in many, many years. So that would have been fun just from that chaos aspect of it. But as it turned out, I didn't have to worry about it. And I'll take the 4th year in a row that I nail it, even though this one wasn't too tricky at all. Pretty straightforward. But that doesn't mean that these brackets aren't intriguing. I think there was a lot of fun matchups in these regionals.
Quickly, I just want to say, if you see 10 troubles coming down the road, you can be sure that 9 of them will run into the ditch before they reach you, and you have to battle only one of them. So I don't think you were paraphrasing. I think you just knew the quote.
It's a good quote. I've said it many a times.
I only know one thing about Calvin Coolidge, and that is his slogan was "Be cool with Coolidge."
Have I shown you my Calvin Coolidge T-shirt?
No. Does it say "Be cool with Coolidge"?
It's a picture of like a black and white picture of Coolidge, but then he's got a do-rag and then a baseball cap on backwards, and it says "Keeping it Coolidge."
Okay, that's pretty awesome.
It's a good shirt.
I don't know how often you wear it, but you should wear it more often.
I only bring it up for special occasions.
No, that's fair. Intriguing matchups. Let's go around the horn here. Manchester, top seed, Boston College against first timer Bentley, winning Atlantic Hockey of America. And then you got Providence against Denver. And first off, do you want to pick region by region who you think is going to come out of it for your pros report prediction, or should we just go around the horn first and then make our predictions?
Sure, I could go either way. We could just stop at each regional and kind of blather on about the regionals and make a pick. How about that?
Well, obviously, there was a writer for some article in some Denver paper, which, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and throw it out here.
St. Louis State has been just blessed. Here we get another look.
Oh, wait, no, wrong clip. I'll edit this out.
Do you have an audio clip? Oh, yeah.
Lowell Sun Sports Memorial Foot and Mouth Award nominee.
We don't want to give Gino short shrift there. I'm sure we'll give that nominee its full day in court here in a little bit as well. But yeah, just the general sounder for the Foot and Mouth Award nominee. Forgot about that.
Yeah, I need to do a better job labeling my.
You can edit that out.
Yeah, edit that out. But basically, a writer for the Denver Post, the sports editor, said, everyone's annual favorite tradition, DU getting the shaft in NCAA tournament selection process. And my jaw dropped when I saw that. Because, you know, the thing about it is also, maybe I want to give that writer a little bit of leeway and say that usually in like newspaper journalists and the writers often don't actually write their own headlines. So because even in the article, reading the article, it's not like he didn't explain how they got the shaft. It was just talking about how they have to travel again and how they got the shaft last year. Which you can make a debate about all you want. But everything, how it was played out, where they're in the bracket with the 1 seed, they are the 9, they are a 3 seed playing the 8. Like absolutely everything is just like this is straight bracket integrity, which is what everybody's favorite thing is going on. So it was just to see that tweet. I'm like, this is an easy Foot and Mouth Award nominee.
Well, we're glad to take the nominees. We'll be revealing the winner during our annual Herbies show coming up. We don't have an exact date yet, but it'll be within the next month or so. So stay tuned for that. We should give him short or proper credit. Matt Schubert, maybe. Denver Post writer. And again, I don't know, the tone of the column makes me think he's some sort of like Jim Suhan, which I thought that's where you're going to go with like newspaper guy. Because a lot of those columnists, they're kind of going for hot takes. This guy doesn't strike me as like a hockey specific writer. This strikes me as like what a Suhan would write if the Gophers 2 years in a row had to go out east. Like, oh, they're screwing us. And so I don't think that it's definitely a nominee. And I like the, when you read the headline, that makes a good soundbite. I think that in itself is the nominee. And if that should more properly be attributed to the editor, the headline writer, rather than Mr. Schubert, please correct us. But
please write in.
But we'll take it. And yeah, the only other thing I would stress to add is, yeah, you're screwed every year except the years that you've hosted the Loveland Regional, which in those cases you are not screwed. And in fact, you're paying for the privilege to get your own quasi home games in these regionals. So you're in Denver. Like if you don't pay off the NCAA to get a regional in your backyard, you're going to be jumping on a plane because none of these regionals are going to be close to you. They don't play regionals in Laramie, Wyoming, unfortunately. So
I've heard.
Yeah. And last year they did just fine having to jump on a plane to their regional. And as you said, this year it works out this way. They're being hosed aside. I do think this is a pretty intriguing regional. I mean, mostly with BC and Denver. Everyone's, I'm sure, overlooking Providence, which maybe we should look out for Providence. But I would think almost everybody has got BC and Denver in this regional final, and being the title game matchup last year, two very high-powered offenses. If that's the regional final that we get, we're probably in for a treat. Who would you have? And again, I'm not trying to give short shrift to Bentley or Providence. Please take them if you'd like. But who do you have coming out of this Manchester Regional?
Well, I mean, that's really kind of the intriguing aspect, I think, of this this regional. Now we have Boston Buckberger announced that he is going to miss the regionals. He had surgery after his injury when he was collided here behind the net
in overtime, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
So he can blame Matt Davis on that injury in particular. They wouldn't have been playing that overtime if he would have just caught the puck there.
Yep. Now, it is Denver in playoff tournament time, which does scare me because they have shown the knack to kind of lock it down anyway. But just looking at the history also of with Boston College in Hockey East with Providence and with Boston College able to handle them fairly easily in January, 3-rip and 4-1. It doesn't really make me have any hope for Providence coming out. By all accounts, they're a solid team, but I would kind of give it to Boston College in this region, and I think maybe if they do get past Denver, I think Boston College is a little bit too good. Some of the experience might also be in Denver's favor, so it wouldn't shock me if Denver ends up taking this region. But if I were to give it my gut check right now, I'd give it to Boston College.
It's such a tough call. I could see it going either way. I mean, these are two high-powered offenses. Denver, most goals scored in the country this year. That was one thing that I saw just kind of perusing the stat rankings for this year. Top 15 teams when it comes to goal scoring this year, 12 of those top 15 make the tournament. Shows you that, I'm talking about like St. Cloud's anemic offense this year. Goal scoring, that's where you're going to be, put yourself in a very good place to make the tournament if you're going to be scoring the goals like the top teams in the country do. The only 3 teams in that top 15 that didn't make the tournament this year, Arizona State, Holy Cross, who just played in that AHA title game, and then Niagara randomly. But and the only teams outside that top 15 that made the tournament, Cornell, which kind of makes sense, Providence, and then Bentley. And so if we're talking about Providence, now very good defensive teams, kind of been their MO under Lehman there. They could certainly stymie Denver, or if they get past them, they could stymie Boston College. It is one and dones. Anything can happen in these games. I would imagine Bentley's gonna at least give Boston College somewhat of a game. We saw Michigan Tech last year. That was a game up until about halfway through the second period, till BC kind of ran away with that one. So I expect some good action here. You're taking BC. That was my natural inclination. I'll see how we do the rest of these 4. I'll reserve the right to flip my vote there to Denver if we agree too much. But my natural instinct would be to agree with you and go with the Eagles onto the Frozen 4 out of this regional.
Gotcha. Let's go to Billy Joel, Allentown regional. We got Maine being the top seed. And they're drawing Penn State, and then Connecticut versus Quinnipiac. Connecticut is their first tournament bid as well, I believe. So congratulations to them. And Quinnipiac, who almost a tale as old as time here. Quinnipiac craps out at the ECAC playoffs and ends up getting another bid there to the ECAC for the conference championship for Cornell. So who you got in this region?
See, this is one, the Toledo regional, which we'll get to, and but that's one where I don't know, we'll get to that. The Allentown and Fargo, I would not be surprised if any of these 4 teams get out of this regional. I see them as being very close, top to bottom. I really like that UConn-Quinnipiac matchup.
I think that's going to be fun to watch.
Interstate kind of budding rivalry. You can't really call it like a long tradition rivalry. As you mentioned, UConn making their first ever tournament. Quinnipiac's, I think I heard the longest current streak of making tournaments, 6, I believe. So 2 different storylines in terms of the familiarity that fans have with them at this tournament. Maine's a good team. We saw Maine beat UConn at the Hockey East final just this last weekend. Penn State's a very hot team. They haven't played in a week plus. So there's that factor. Might be the rust to rest. Talk about that with all the Big Ten teams, Gophers in particular. But they're a team that's playing their best hockey, and they're a team that's going to be playing with a partisan crowd on their side in Allentown. So I can't put them past I can't hand wave them away as yet another 4 seed. I think they've still got a good chance to make it out of the regional as well. For something, I don't know. I got a hunch. I'm going to go UConn. Got a good feeling about them.
No, I like that pick. I know there's a lot of talk about Maine and having to play against Penn State. With Penn State being the host there, that's why those schools pay the money to get any advantage they can. I don't think it's going to be enough to defeat Maine. Maine, a lot of depth scoring, but also really stingy when it comes to giving up goals as well. And Maine is going to be my pick out of that regional as well. But I do agree with you that I think this is one where all these teams wouldn't surprise me if they come out of it.
Who do you got winning that UConn-Quinnipiac game?
I've got Connecticut as well. I've got UConn.
So Maine over UConn in that final.
Maine over UConn as a rematch. Yep. So
I could definitely see it.
Yep. And I'm also excited to see, kind of what the attendance would be like in that. You got obviously Penn State being the host, but Maine, by all accounts and what I've seen about that, that fan base has amped up.
And then you got the ice bus with UConn and being their first ever appearance at the dance. Their basketball team's out, so I would assume it's all in on men's hockey for this weekend, and you're playing an in-state rival to boot. So I think that we've seen when Penn State makes that Allentown, when they make a hosted regional, their fans turn out. So that should be a pretty I think that should be a pretty intriguing regional from not just the on ice product, but from an atmosphere standpoint as well.
Fargo. We got Western Michigan and Minnesota State. And then we have Massachusetts against Minnesota. And I was a little bit bummed, with Western Michigan win to put them up to a 1 seed. It looks like if they lost, Minnesota would have been a 1. Then we would have had another Minnesota State matchup. And then we had a Pitlick revenge game. I think that would be a kind of fun,
you might get it.
Line. And we
still
be
in the regional final.
Yep, in the regional final. And Minnesota State has a pretty good record against Minnesota in regionals. So I actually can only think of 1 win, but I'm going to say that was.
They've won the last 2 meetings they've had. Well, they won the in the Frozen Four semi against them in 2022, and then they beat them in the regional final in 2021. That was the year that St. Cloud the tip in Pittsburgh.
Nolan Walker.
I think that's the only 2 times they played in the tournament. Yeah. So in that sense, they've got an undefeated record against the Fighting Motzkos in the tournament. I would assume Gopher fans are not excited of that prospect. I think you've also got like the big bruising. Like if we get that matchup and we get Gopher fans, if they lose that game, Gopher fans it's the coded language will come out. Older, bigger players. It's going to be a lot of that in terms of their grumbling and griping. Either that or the 19-day rest, which we saw Buccigross and company forward that talking point to my chagrin on the selection show last night. I think this is another regional where I don't sleep on UMass, which we haven't really mentioned yet, or Western Michigan for that matter. I think all four of these teams too could win this regional. I wouldn't be surprised if any of the four make it out of Fargo. Goaltending, you mentioned this last week in terms of previewing the Frozen Faceoff. Maybe a little bit vindicated. It's not like Slukinski lit the world on fire, but in comparison to Davis's blunder, I think Slukinski outperformed Davis in that title game. I think goaltending is going to be key at this regional as well. Slukinski, who we mentioned, has taken the reins for the Broncos in net. Alex Tracy, who's the lone goaltender nominated in the Hobey top 10, which we'll get to in a little bit, but he's been Mankato's best player, even probably more valuable than Pitlick, even at on the offensive side of the puck. He's going to be tough to beat. And yes, you can put his numbers and put asterisks there in terms of CCHA schedule versus, Big Ten or NCHC's kind of schedules for the other teams, Hockey East for UMass. But you've got two really good goalies there. Michael Rayball from UMass also putting up a very solid season for the Minutemen. The Gophers, I think it's the biggest question mark because they've had a tandem this year. Liam Soulier has been playing most of their games. He was a Penn State transfer, and he put up a terrible year last year. He was like Gavin Enright, like 873 save percentage, something like that last year. But he had a very good year for the Gophers this year, but towards the end of the year, hurt and wasn't able to finish that Notre Dame series. They had to go to this Nathan Airy, who's been more middling to average this year. Gophers have offense. They have offensive weapons where they're playing Matthew Wood on the fourth line a lot of this year. But in terms of the goaltending in particular, I worry about that in a one and done situation from them. So I do think that they're going to beat UMass in that game, but I'm going to take Western Michigan coming out of this regional. And I do think that Western Mankato game is going to be perhaps overtime. That'll be a tight one-goal affair as well. So I'm looking forward to a lot of good games in this regional, but I'll take the Broncos coming out of Fargo.
This, my pick's probably going to be a little bit off the board. And I don't have really any rhyme or reason when it comes to why I'm thinking it, but I'm going to actually pick UMass out of this regional.
I don't think that's crazy at all.
I think they've been playing really good hockey. I think a lot of their losses as of recently have been in overtime. And so they're going to be able to skate with anyone. I think if they get out to a lead against Minnesota, especially early, with, like you said, the rust of not playing at a competitive level for, an extended period of time, I think it's going to be tough to adjust. And Minnesota goaltending questions aplenty, and then also their penalty kill as well is pretty bad. So with that, I got actually UMass coming out of that regional, and then not only that, I do have Minnesota State beating Western Michigan.
And again, for all those Western Michigan fans who listen to this show, I was the one that was down on them compared to you for the bulk of this season. I'm the one that's got them in St. Louis. So
correct.
Hear me right, Bronco Dan. Don't tweet at me that I don't like your Broncos.
Bronco Dan, were you getting into fights on Twitter again?
No, that was from a couple of weeks ago. Where he clearly listened to some of the show, but then he was asking me questions that I clearly addressed on the show. So were you listening, or were you just listening with one ear?
Dan, get with it. First off, Western Michigan's a fast team. And that's what really
they're Broncos. Broncos are quick.
Broncos, they're fast, allegedly.
They've got horsepower.
I mean, I mean, there was one time they didn't have a lot of horsepower where they didn't go above 55 in California, but that Bronco, I think, is long gone.
Took me a little bit there.
It's a long OJ joke for everyone.
Thanks, Dennis Miller, for your 1996 joke.
That's about right. But here's the thing: is that I think this is actually going to be a game where Minnesota kind of sneaks out. I think Western Michigan's going to dominate on shots. But I think Tracy is actually going to surprise everyone. Where, like you said, he's a Hobey Baker candidate, but at the same time, it's CCHA, put an asterisk by it. I think actually he's going to really surprise. He's going to stand on his head. Bump is a fantastic player. This is, I think, my first time, maybe not, but I think I'll just say it's my first time seeing him live, and he looked just dominating all over the ice. But if you're able to slow him down, which is easier said than done, but I think Minnesota State has the team that they're able to do it, and coaching able to do it. I think that might hinder a little bit of Western Michigan, and playing a different style. I think it's going to be a shockingly low scoring game that Minnesota State's going to eke out. And I think that's going to be my big upset of the weekend.
Are we in agreement that this is maybe the regional you're most interested in?
As far as a local aspect, yes. As far as intriguing matchups, I think it's Allentown.
Really?
Yeah.
I would go with this. With the region, with the local two Minnesota teams plus Western, which we know pretty well, UMass being, I did see UMass earlier this year. They played in that Arizona State tournament. They played Robert Morris. They smoked him. It was like 8-1 or something like that. But so I have seen them this year in person. But them being sort of the one outlier, the one non-Western team in this regional. But I do feel like, and I was bummed to see it was the Thursday early games. So I wish that I took a day off. I took Friday off. We have a floating holiday for March, and I take this off months ago. But I'm like, I'll take off the Friday of the regionals. And so I wish that I know the Manchester regionals, the early regional on Friday, so I'll be able to catch those. But the Thursday games, I'll certainly miss that Western Mankato game. I should be able to watch most of the Gophers game, but at least the regional final I'll be able to catch. So I'm looking forward to that. But this was a sexy regional to me.
I mean, I think it's intriguing. As far as like the hockey, and maybe it's because I actually I haven't really watched a lot of those other teams play, and I'm really interested in watching them more. And maybe I'm jumping on a little bit too much of the main bandwagon and the resurgence of that program. And, as a college hockey old school mentality that I have, it's nice to see them in their jersey kind of back in postseason play. And maybe that's why I'm biting down onto that a little bit too hard. And then UConn, I think Quinnipiac is going to be great. So that's why I'm still looking at Allentown as the one I'm kind of looking at a little bit more. But
I get that.
So, but yeah, I think the UMass kind of sneaks out of this one and surprises everyone.
I like that pick. I'll stick with the Broncos.
All right. And then again, I think it would be surprising to see Minnesota State come out of that regional, but I don't think anybody else, it would be that surprising. Obviously, with Western and Minnesota, I think I was going to say, I think there's only a couple of teams that I would be really surprised if they make the Frozen Four, and they might make a run like an Omaha or a Bemidji State or whatnot. But
I was going to say that if we were going to preview the last bracket here, last regional of the 16 teams, I was thinking today there's only 3 that I would be surprised made the final or the Frozen Four. Bentley,
and are 3 of
Providence,
them in Toledo? Oh, no. Bentley,
Providence, 2 of them in Manchester, and then Cornell, who's playing in Toledo. I would be surprised if they made it out of the regional. But any of the other 13 teams, it would not shock me if any of those made it to St. Louis.
Sure. And then, with Toledo, Michigan State and Cornell are playing, as well as the 2-3 seed is Boston University against Ohio State. And this is the region where I do not care a flying anything about. Like, this is like they have the regional of death, you know, or the pool of death when it comes to like World Cup. This is these teams can all just die kind of region. I have zero care about any of them, good or bad, really. It like all of them are whole hum. Cornell, you know, cool story.
You're really rooting for Mike Schaefer there, right?
Well, Woden is just massive, licking his chops. He's so excited about the Swan Song that's going on.
Yeah, them making the regional, that's given him 3 articles at least that he can write based on that.
So you gotta keep those ads happy there with for CHN. So those regional those
it's at least 3 because it's they made it to the regionals last year. Wow. Then they lost in the regional. Oh God, what a career. And then it's the after the season. Let's sum it all up, Mike. Put all the 30 years in a time capsule. Let me have it. The one final exit interview. So there's the 3 articles right there. That CHN. You can count on those like clockwork.
Any thoughts on this regional, or are you as apathetic about this regional as I am, or maybe I'm just way off on it? It's
of the 4 regionals, it's the one I have the least that I feel is the least spicy. But like I said, I still think the 3 of the 4 teams like have a legit chance. I think Ohio State's a team that gets slept on. I wouldn't be surprised if they come out of this region. BU's got some firepower as well. They're an interesting team. They could make it for, I think, this would be the 3rd straight Frozen Four under Pandolfo. But then Michigan State, number 2 overall. You've got to feel like they're the favorite here. And so, but playing Cornell is never a fun task. It's going to be a tough game for them to beat. It's going to be like a 2-1 type game, I bet. But yeah, it's not the one I'm circling the most. Do you have a team coming out of that? Like, who's your pick for your snoozer regional?
My snoozer regional, I'm going BU.
You're going to go BU?
Yep.
All right, I'll take Michigan State if you're going to leave them out there.
Yep. Go right ahead.
And then I'll stick with BC out of Manchester because we're different enough in the other 3 regionals. I don't need to flip that to Denver.
All right.
So you've got BC, Maine,
UMass,
and BU. And I've got BC, UConn, Western Michigan, and who did I just take? Michigan State.
So how much that I have ragged on CHN in the past for being East Coast bias, here I have 3 of, UMass, BC, and BU here in the
and no NCHC team.
No NCHC.
Don't you know that this is the best league in the world?
Oh,
Travis?
That's very true. And watch, they're going to come prove it to me, and they're going to be the final 2 teams in the. Just watch it be a Denver Western Michigan final.
You know what? I wouldn't really argue with that. I wouldn't complain about it.
After this last game, I wouldn't complain either. And so, I mean, that's very true. But I didn't know as we were doing this on the fly, I didn't think I would have such not only an East Coast bias, but a Massachusetts bias.
Well, I mean, it's been a Hockey East kind of dominated year nationally.
That's
so,
true.
I mean, that would give credence to that league being, I mean, that's something we'll see play out this weekend is Hockey East for real? Are they deserving of having 6 teams in this tournament? It's going to be hard for a performance like when the Big Ten had those 4 routes in the regionals a couple of years ago. It's going to be hard for a conference to make a similar type of statement like that in a regional as a conference spread across the 4 regionals. But I do think that Hockey East has something to prove because it's not like this. It's not like Hockey East puts this kind of performance each year. Is 2 years ago they put 2 teams into the field. BU and Merrimack were the only 2 teams to make it in 2023.
I always forget Miramax and Hockey East. They feel like an ECAC team to me.
They are kind of the sore thumb of that
Right?
league, Yeah, you got all the flagship schools for all the New England states, and then you've just got this weird private school that's probably it's somewhere in Massachusetts, right? North Andover, I think, is the city.
Is there anyone they can trade? Like, who from ECAC do you think should be in Hockey East?
Quinnipiac, I'm sure, is like raising their hand vigorously.
That's like, probably true.
Pick us.
But yeah, that would be the first, I mean, I would imagine 4 Hockey East teams, clearly all 4 in the same league hasn't happened since all the WCHA. And I don't know.
Yeah, you literally took all 4 Hockey East teams.
I took all 4. That's why I said, like,
this is 2005.
Okay.
In reverse.
So here's the big question now. If all 4 of them do make it, and I am correct, or any of the all 4, Hockey East, do we praise the almighty pairwise as being correct? Number 1 with the bullet. This is the perfect objective system. Look, it's in the record. They were the best conference. They've got the best teams, clearly, right here. Or if it goes completely south, do we have to have the conversation of blow up the pairwise? This is a garbage system and it's not good.
Well, if it is all 4 Hockey East teams, you got also the other possibility would be, is this the we're entering the era of Hockey East as being the best league in the world now, because 2005,
Gino's ears are burning right now.
All WCHA teams in that Frozen Four, and I mean the WCHA pumping its chest out started before that. I mean the Gophers had won back-to-back and 02-03, so I'm sure he could even trace it back to that, but that I think solidified to a lot of Western hockey fans, Western US. I'm not talking Western Michigan, but that probably solidified the talking point. The WCHA was the best thing since sliced bread, and that's transferred over to the NCHC, that talking point. I think we'll get to this in our North Dakota discussion as well. Again, my pumping the brakes on reading too much into the NCAA tournament, which I know sounds crazy, and I wish it was crazy. But at the end of the day, this still is a random set of events, and I hesitate on reading too much into the results of the tournament. If it is 4 Hockey East teams, I think it's more coincidence than tells us any sort of grand truth. But, that's what the debates are for. That's what social media is for. That's what blog posts and hot air on podcasts. That's all that's for. So I mean, I'm for it if it starts a discussion, because I'm always happy to have a discussion.
Sure.
But that's what we can expect this weekend, is at least some narratives to emerge.
Yeah. And I don't know. Like you said, it's kind of a random set of events on what ends up happening and who ends up winning it. And I completely agree. One tournament does not a pairwise grandiose opinion make. But it's just kind of an interesting pose of the question too. And you can say that, the pairwise is flawed anyway, because, you shouldn't have 6 in the same, but you can make that comparison any year about the pairwise being flawed, because it is flawed, but it is the flawed system that we have that everyone abides by and everyone has agreed to. So it's all flawed and everyone's got the same rules. So it's objectively flawed, I guess, is the best way we can say it. No matter what Greg Powers or Chris Mayotte have to say.
I was hoping too. We're getting the Monday after, like, the end of the season for most teams. This is typically when we would get, like, I'm wondering if we're going to get a Greg Powers quote. Like, if he's got his coach's show tonight, like, monitor that coach's show, because there could be some gold in there. Yeah. So this is the season for foot and mouth. This is foot and mouth season.
We got foot and mouth season right now, and obviously we already got one with the Denver writer saying how Denver got shafted.
That's right. That one might grow on me. I think that one's got some legs.
right away, I was like, with the I don't know if it's my leader in the clubhouse, still saying the refs dropped the puck in favor of North Dakota. I can't.
That one's up there. Powers has been nominated already.
Powers, I think, might have 2 nominations at this point for everything he's been saying.
It's a competitive year. We'll put it at that.
It's good. So, who's your natty?
We're actually picking a natty out of the regional, not just. I thought we were just doing Frozen Fours. So who did I have? BC.
Well, why not? We go this far. Let's just pick.
So I would have BC versus Western, and then I have Michigan State against UConn.
No.
I'm just trying to think of that. That was what my Frozen Four was.
Oh, that's your Frozen Four, yeah. You'd have Boston College first against UConn, and then Western Michigan against Michigan State.
No, it would be the 1 seed lines up with the 4 seed.
Oh, yes. Wait,
so
hold on.
It'd be BC versus Western, and then Michigan State versus UConn.
Yeah, that's right. The CHN bracket is laid out so stupid.
We know we're smart enough to avoid this, knowing taking what CHN tells us at face value. I will go. The last time that the Frozen Four was in St. Louis, Michigan State won it in 2007.
I forgot about that year.
Which was a cheesy
title.
I
forgot about that Michigan State team. Ugh,
it was a cheesy title. It was one of the first of the run of cheesy titles. Them and Yale and Minnesota Duluth 3 times and Providence. That really kind of kickstarted the randomness, the roulette wheel that the
well, I mean, in between there, you still had BC a couple of times.
It was basically BC winning all the other years that those fluke teams didn't win. Because they won in 2008, BU won in 2009, and then BC won in 10, BC won in 12. So it was a lot of BC. And then Denver. Denver's picked it up here in the last couple of years, too. North Dakota, I think, won it somewhere in there. I don't know. By a guy that Brent Berry, I think was his guy, is one of their coaches that used to
If you were to eat a Bradbury, what would it taste like? Sour?
If I'm banned from saying the Mike Schaefer tongue bath, you can't say what does a Bradbury taste like. That's the rules of this show.
All right. Who's your natty? You go.
I said Michigan State. Michigan State. And it's going to be real this time. It's not going to be a fluke.
It's going to be a real
Isaac Howard with the winner in overtime for Dan Jacobson.
That's
we like Ike.
The water boy gif of the special teams coach rubbing his nipples there. That's that'll be me if Isaac Howard scores the game winner.
Please,
overtime.
If they win it and it's that way, you are tweeting that picture.
Oh, write it, Dan Jacobson too. I will send it to him every day.
Take a Polaroid of it and mail it to him.
I'm on the bandwagon. This is probably more with my heart than it is with my head, but I'm going Maine. I want to see Maine win this. I think that'll be fun, and I think I think for what the program was, and then was more recently, and then now it's kind of an inverted bell curve, I guess you can say, and to have them kind of back on top, I think overall will be fun. So
if they win, if Maine wins, will you join all the other ESPN commentators in calling Coach Benny Barr? Are you going to call him Benny at that point?
Gross. Did they do that? I didn't watch.
That's what Colby Cohen did. Starman, I think, exclusively refers to him as Benny Barr. It's one of like your buddy. It's me and Benny. It's not Ben Barr. It's Benny Barr. But that's only if he wins the Natty. I think it's the rule is if he wins the Natty, then it's Benny. But until then, it's only inner circle ESPN announcers can call him Benny.
Gotcha. No, I will not be ever actually calling him Benny.
Next time Starman says Benny Barr, you will laugh.
I will. I will call him Mr. Barr. Actually, is what I am not. I am not on a first name with Ben, and I'm sure as heck not on nickname with Benny basis with him. So Mr. Barr, So I don't watch.
Barr.
any of the sports or the show or the selection show or whatnot, and the women's selection show as well. I didn't watch any of that because I know that they would just butcher everything anyway. So, Hobey Baker. What do you want to do? Final three for Hobey Baker?
Yeah, that's what we did with Patty Kaz. So remind me, rattle off those top 10 if you have them in front of you.
All right. Z Booyam, Jimmy Snuggerud, Isaac Hauer, Alex Tracy, Aiden Fink, Mac Godowski, Liam McKinsky, Jack Devine, Ryan Leonard, and Arten Martino. So I think right now we can eliminate Arten Martino
from Clarkson. He's out. The two Atlantic hockey players.
Liam McKlinsky and Alex Tracy. I think we can eliminate those.
Mankato fans are hurt right now.
Yeah, all four of them. Fight me.
I would say.
I mean, I think he's shooing for Richter, obviously. So,
have they announced those finalists yet?
I don't know if they have.
I feel like if they've done the Hobey finalists, you feel like they would have. Yeah, we do have finalists.
Yeah. Augustine, Boya, Fowler, and Alex Tracy.
Well, we know who you're taking out of that.
Yes, I am.
He's got the best stats. I'll say Fowler. I'm going to go. The BC's plays a tougher schedule, and he's the sexier pro prospect. So I'll go Fowler for that. I'm going to go for Hobey. I'll say Ike. I like Ike.
You like Ike? Another slogan.
Ryan Leonard from BC, and I'll go Zeev Booyam from Denver. That's my three. Does both Hobey and Richter go to BC players? No, I'm going to go with the Dan Jacobson Troll Tour. I'm going to go Isaac Howard for Hobey.
I like it. I am going to go fairly similar, though. And I do like, you know what? Do I leave Ryan Leonard off? Hold on a second.
It is a good 10. I'll say that. Like Snuggerud's, that's a good nomination. It's Devine. I mean, Devine's leading the country in scoring, which surprised me when I checked that out. Sneaky, but national points leader, if there is such a thing. And with Booyam being the only teammates, make it like, do they cancel each other out as votes? I got to think that Booyam's considered the best defenseman, which is why I'm going to put him in the top three.
Yeah, exactly. That's Booyam. I was looking at Devine, but I mean, like you said, it's sneaky because 13 goals, 43 assists. And that would be the least amount of goals since Drew LeBlanc, who had 13 when he won Hobey Baker. Now, Drew LeBlanc had the story, and him coming back from a broken leg, and, taking a red shirt, coming back and leading his team to his first Frozen Four. So that story was there. Whereas I don't think Denver exactly has that type of story. So that's where I'm going to think the goal scoring is not there for Devine. So I am going to leave him off. So if that's the case, I do agree with you on Booyam. So I will say that. I do still also want to troll Howard. And you have Howard and Leonard?
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
I have the same three. Going through it right now. I want to be different, though. So, not Leonard, and I'll go Jack Devine then. That's fine.
If I was going to put a fourth, I might put Snuggerud up there. I don't think he's going to win it, but he might sneak into the top three. But I like the three that I originally had, but I hate agreeing. So I'm glad that you took another candidate off that list too, or you could have gone with Tracy too.
You know what?
He
Actually,
could sneak in there.
I'm gonna go Isaac Howard, Aiden Fink, and Zeev William.
Okay.
I'll throw in Fink in there. Why not?
Yeah, I mean he's put up a good year, and unlike the BC or Denver guys,
1.41 points per game as a sophomore.
Yeah, and you can't say that unlike Denver and BC, that they're surrounded by a bunch of other high scoring players. Like Penn State's a good high scoring team, but Fink's been carrying more of the load in relative to his other teammates than those Denver players or the BC guys. So that's a good one.
Also, we should make sure everyone's aware Aiden Fink and Isaac Howard then Aiden Fink are 1-2 in chip. So I think how that factors into Hobey Baker voting as well.
Who is Howard is 2? That almost makes
Fink
me
is
think
2. Howard is 1.
Oh, no, I'm checking it here. It looks like Jacob Fowler is actually number 1. He edged out Howard, according to the CHN Hobey tracker that I'm looking at right now.
Oh, really? Well, when I just look at the 24-25 NCAA statistics score, I guess I'm looking at scoring leaders. I'm not looking at...
Again, it's CHN's
Hobey
website.
tracker.
You take everything with a grain of
fair.
salt. And I was thinking Matt Gadelsky, so he's from Army, and he was one of the top 10. He is the son of Guy Gadelsky, Penn State head coach. He puts up a Hobey-nominated season at Army in the Atlantic Hockey, 42 points. Like, Guy Gadelsky only softens his non-conference schedule with Atlantic Hockey players. Why did he let his own son, his own flesh and blood, go to an Atlantic Hockey team, which all that he would do is put Army on the schedule for Penn State to beat up by 10 goals. So maybe check out the portal, maybe in the summertime, or I don't know, maybe it's a go your own way kind of thing. Like no Nepo Tony Lucia story.
No Tony and the Don.
So potentially,
I did see
I
a
saw
pretty
the
funny video on. Are you going to talk about the Don Lucia video?
Oh, I did see that. I wasn't going to bring that up, but I did retweet
just since
that.
we're talking about that, I saw someone leaning over after the championship game asking Don Lucia if it's time to go home now. Can I go home now?
Yeah, and he's like, he finally got it. He had to ask him twice.
Yeah.
And then I think he finally dawned on it. He had this thumbs up and the half smile on his face. Like, you just need to zoom in on that and freeze frame it, and then give that picture to Don Lucia from 15 years ago and say, this is where you're going to end up. And that's all you need to know.
Yep. What were you going to say?
I can't remember now.
Oh, well, that's fair enough.
Moving on.
So, then, what do you want to do? Women's Frozen Four?
Yeah. Hell of a game.
Let's do that. And yeah, that was an exciting game. I know you tweeted out, please don't let it be 1-0. And fairly quickly, it was not 1-0. So Ohio State gets the lead. Then Wisconsin ends up getting it or tying it up. And then Ohio State had a 3-1 lead.
Correct. Early in the second.
Then slowly able to chip away at it. Got a goal, I believe. I don't have the box score in front of me. Was that Layla Edwards with the goal? With the second goal?
Second goal? I got to bring up the... Come on, you're bearing the lead here. It was all about the penalty shot.
It was all about the penalty shot and the subsequent overtime as well. You are correct. I am bearing the lead on purpose when it comes
Harvey
to that.
got the second goal to bring him back to 3-2. But then it stayed 3-2 up until the
Layla
last
Edwards
minute.
got the first goal. Okay.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so you had the Joy Dunn shorty, and then you had the Edwards goal right after that.
Yep.
Which at that point, I'm like, I relaxed because I'm like, yeah, it's nice that they got early goals. And it was almost like I thought this is like one of those Kevin Gorg gets credit because, yeah, it's a lot of these championship games. And no team wants to blink first, And was it the problem? Was it a bad decision for Iowa State to go ahead and score that first goal? Because then it fully engages Wisconsin. You're entering into a boat race with these Wisconsin Badgers. Like, do so at your own peril. But for the majority of that game, looked like Ohio State was gonna get away with it, and they were playing a really good game. Thiele, who's not put up great numbers, especially in comparison to McNaughton for Wisconsin this year, she was coming up huge. But then it's that too many players penalty was the first sign that not a great penalty to take there with under 2 minutes to go there in the third period.
Nope, not at all.
But then we get the flurry in front of the net. When I first saw the replay, before they had challenged it, I said that should be a penalty shot because it looked like she had gripped the puck.
I was surprised they reviewed it for that long. I guess they wanted to make sure that, they could call it because the puck did squeak out after a little bit. But it was the outstretch, I believe, the outstretch of the hand and covering it and trying to keep it under yourself. I think eventually the ref was able to call that a penalty shot.
She squeezed her fingers at some point, which means she was trying to grip the puck, which you can't do in the crease. Yeah. Now that's still, and someone for me who I hate reviews. I've been on record saying we should get rid of all video reviews. This is the scenario that tests that principle. Sure. And I'm sure that's kind of why they took a little bit extra to look at it, because the gravity of the situation, 20 seconds to go in the national title game, you're in the position to give the team that's down a goal a penalty shot. You got to be sure about that. And so, and in some sense, I'm sure if you're an Ohio State fan, you've got some saltiness about that call. And I can see it both ways. I do think in a regular season game, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
But national title game with everything on the line, with so few seconds left on the clock, it's a tough position to put officials in. I do think they made the right call. Now, there was more controversy on the actual penalty shot, which I saw some people were complaining that, and I think Buzzerall was in the moment wondering if Sims broke momentum, took the puck back. I had to kind of look at the rule book to refresh my memory as far as what the rule goes there. I know you tweeted about it as well. What'd you think about the Sims? Is that a legal penalty shot? Because again, I think yes, it is.
At first glance, I thought no. I thought not only that, but I thought she brought the puck backwards. Not only that, but I thought she made a complete stop and then went backwards when she tried to sidestep and end up, going that way with it. So right away I was like, oh, I don't think that's going to count. And then they counted it a goal. And then I saw the replays and I'm like, ooh, that's a lot closer than I thought it was. And then NCAA hockey tweeted out a goal line shot of it and them going down. And as I saw that, I'm like, oh no, she kept moving forward. It's just Kirsten Sims on her edge work was just so good of how she was able to cut back like she did and still end up going forward. That was able to just make that move. And it was a heck of a move at a heck of a time. Apparently, it was kind of a no-brainer, at least on the bench of, whereas a lot of the players were saying to Sims, they were all saying to her, hey, you got to take it. You got to take it. You got to take it, which got her confidence kind of boosted up. And then Mark Johnson just leaning back against the glass just says, who wants it?
Great moment.
Just who wants it? And you got Kirsten Sims just raises her hand. She's like, yep. Okay, there it is. You would have gone.
That's if you're asking that question as a coach, that's the response you want. Not necessarily that's who the player you have in mind. It's who's the one that's got the hand up immediately.
Yep. Exactly. And I would bet Mark Johnson at that time too was like, okay, this is going to overtime. If you've got a player like that who is just able just to have the confidence to be like, yeah, this is me. Well, okay, we're going to overtime because this is going to be a goal. And sure enough, she pulled out a heck of a move. Ends up bearing it. Now, I was a little bit surprised, and I think you were surprised too that Sims went out there. Obviously, it's not a bad call. Even at the time, it's not like, you've got, the 29-27 Yankees or whatnot. You've got a heck of a roster out there. Any one of them could, you can make a case for, but I would have thought you put your Patty Kaz winner out there with O'Brien. That's kind of who I thought would go out there. I believe you tweeted out that you would go with Layla. Edwards.
Yeah, based on that earlier goal of that game and the goal it wasn't a breakaway, but quasi breakaway, the 2-on-1 in the semifinal against the Gophers. She's got that dangle. I think she's their best chance on a breakaway opportunity. Sims wouldn't have been my first two picks, but they made the right call. And as you said, it's one of those things with Johnson there. I've picked this up with David Carl, with Denver. I remember thinking this. I was reminded about, and I don't think about this game too often, but the Air Force debacle. That game, there was two shots back to back. One was Motzko, who, again, that was like the Sioux Falls regional, which was his way station between being a St. Cloud coach and a Gopher coach. So he wasn't really fully engaged in that game either, but his face, he had the look of constipation on his face shortly into the game after Air Force had taken the lead. And then they flipped the camera over to Sarah Torrey on the Air Force bench, and he's just the most relaxed. He's got one hand kind of leaning back on the boards. There is something about coaches who are that calm and sort of not really tense. I think that exudes a confidence to the players.
Yeah.
I think I do
influence. Yeah.
It's like a killer instinct, and you can't teach it. And Johnson was his 8 titles for him. He's been here before, obviously 1980 veteran as well. But I thought that moment, it was just like, again, when he said that and how the response of Sims, it was kind of a foregone conclusion, but great drama. I will say, and great atmosphere. Yep. Sims obviously with the winner as well in overtime, and Ohio State first minute or so in overtime had several chances there too. I mean, a great performance by both teams. And yeah, I definitely see it from Ohio State's perspective. Like, talk about a gut punch of a loss. Mm-hmm. That's got to be difficult to come back from. But with Ohio State with that win, they're in the conversation for best team ever. I think you got to put them up there with the undefeated Gophers team from 2013. I do think that the WCHA of 24-25 is stronger top to bottom than it was back in 2013.
Yeah.
So you've got that case to make. And from St. Cloud's perspective, just one of 3 games that Wisconsin didn't win this year. 2 of them were at the hands of Ohio State, 1 to St. Cloud State. The only one of those games that Wisconsin was able to win on their home ice. So that's a feather in the Huskies' cap, I think, if you want to give it that credit. But fantastic Badger team, and going to be a very dangerous Badger team again next year. I mean, with the amount of depth they have in this team, O'Brien's gone. I mean, they're losing some key players. But now Edwards is back. Harvey is back. Some of their top end talent is going to be returning. And you can say the same with Ohio State, a little bit of an older team, but Joy Dunn's just a sophomore. She'll be back. Ohio State's not going anywhere either. So at this very early stage, I don't think it's crazy to pencil these 2 teams as the favorites to make the final next year. Just with the strength of their programs, it's hard to knock them off that pedestal at this point. And at least we got a classic in the title game. Of these 3 straight, the 1-0 games, they were still good games, but there's only so much you can kind of dissect in a 1-0 game. With a game like we had on Sunday, I think it's going to be one that's going to be talked about for a long time to come.
Yep, I wanted to just kind of take a look overall at that Minnesota team. I mean, yeah, you had Amanda Kessel with 101 points that season. went 41-0, broke the pairwise. Like they had to just readjust it because it just didn't work unless you had a loss. So it was, you had that, Hannah Brandt, and then Macon Bozak, and then after that, it kind of, I'd say it dropped off, but then, Becky Cordham had 32 points. You had, or you had Marianne McAfee with 38, and then 32, 32, 32, 30, 29. So you still had so many points scored. But, kind of like you said, the team wasn't or the conference itself wasn't as good. It wasn't as deep. So
just 2 teams from the WCHA made it to the tournament that year. 8-team field back then. Do you know who the other team was? Who played the Gophers and took them to triple overtime in their first round game in that tournament. The only other WCHA team to make the field that year.
You make it sound like it's a surprise.
It might be.
I'm not going to say Wisconsin. Ohio State at that time was not good.
Nope.
St. Cloud obviously wasn't.
We're quite familiar with their coach.
Quite familiar with their coach.
The coach of that team. He now coaches for someone else who we might have a podcast about.
Oh, geez, North Dakota.
Mr. Adolski's.
Yep, Adolski.
North Dakota.
Funny.
The second of 2 appearances that he made with that program before they were folded up abruptly in 2017. But took them to triple overtime in that first round game. They had to go to overtime in the semifinals too against BC, and then beating Boston University in the title game. So they had to win the Bean Pot in the Frozen Four that year. But Nora Ratti as well on the St. Cloud staff. She was the goaltender of that undefeated Gopher team. So go Huskies woo there as she's a current member of the staff. But that shows you there. You had relatively speaking, a year that Wisconsin didn't make the tournament. Duluth would have been the other big power of the WCHA back then because, as you said, Ohio State really hadn't emerged yet. But neither of those teams made it. And so that gives you an idea of, I think, not just the strength of the WCHA, but just women's hockey in general has increased in the, 12 years since then. So you can definitely put this 35-1-2 team from Wisconsin into the mix of best team at the D1 level.
Yep, I agree with you there. I want to quickly go back to the semifinal game, just because the
Murph, you going with Murph?
I gotta talk about Murph. I gotta talk about Abby Murphy. I'm sorry, but just to see her absolutely demolish Harvey with an elbow to the face and not get kicked out, which I thought should have been ejection. And maybe the refs don't want to put their hand in it too much, especially, with the Gopher star player, and especially with the star player playing in the Frozen Four at the arena of the host.
And it was 5 minutes into the game too.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, Harvey goes down to the tunnel, leaves, ends up coming back because she's a hockey player. And then first chance she gets, Abby Murphy is digging the puck in the corner with her back turned, and Harvey just lays her out.
And she falls like a cheap suit.
And she just crumbled just like an accordion there, just laying in the corner of the ice. And I'm never one to be like, hey, you should intentionally hurt someone, but there is something about karma that kind of comes back.
And we knew she was embellishing it a little bit there. It's not, she's putting on a good act.
As she is one to do, to say the least. So
she wasn't able to Meryl Streep it into a 5-minute major though. Harvey only got called for 2.
Yep.
So her flopping on the ice, all for naught.
All for naught. And I wonder if having that reputation, if that call if she didn't have that reputation, maybe she gets that call. But
and as you said, I think if it's in a regular season game, I think she's out. She's kicked out of the game with that major. I think she's only in that game because it's the Frozen Four, and that might be BS. But I can understand it from the ref's perspective. Like,
sure.
Again, the weight of the call. It is the Frozen Four. Same with the title game circumstance. And it's a lot on the line, so I can see where they're coming from there.
Yeah. So, but yeah, overall, I just wanted to pump on that. And then, Patty Kaz, we have O'Brien. I know I mentioned that earlier about the penalty shot, but no surprise there with O'Brien winning the Patty Kaz. I think it was a pretty slam dunk case for her. So congratulations to her. And overall, watch women's hockey, I guess, is just kind of my main takeaway from all of it, because, it just overall, if you're a hockey fan, if you just watch it, you'll realize it's not that much, it's obviously it's the same game. And there are times I think the passing on the women's team is better than the passing on the men's team for the Huskies. So that's for sure.
Well, that's a low bar to clear when talking about
it is
passing, but
yeah, it is. But it's but overall, it's a good level of hockey to watch, and it's especially when you got two powerhouse teams slugging it, and hopefully we can get St. Cloud State there here in the near future.
I do think that if this title game, I think has the opportunity of being a level upper for women's hockey, if you will. I think and the controversy might help it in that regard.
Sure.
More people are looking at those replays than normally would have watched replays of the women's title game, the college hockey title game. Maybe that's not the best way to get eyeballs to the sport, but I think that they're legit. I mean, watching that penalty shot, for instance, that's a highlight reel play. If there is controversy on whether or not it was exactly 100% compliant with the rule, we can have that debate. That's what social media is for. But just the atmosphere in the building. We have like the shirtless guys banging the glass down in the front there. Like it felt like a fun building to be in.
Yeah.
And good representation by both Wisconsin and Ohio State there being in Minnesota's building. I was a little skeptical as far as is it going to be a situation where a lot of Gopher fans would have bought those tickets and then bailed prior to the championship game, but it delivered. And like I said, I got the feeling after those first two goals were scored that we're in for a good treat.
Yeah.
And I probably was my expectations were exceeded in how it all played out there at the end. So definitely a big thumbs up for this women's Frozen Four.
Yep, very much so. And I haven't said it, but I'd be remiss if I didn't. But Kirsten Sims was able to get the game winner as well.
I think I mentioned that. Yeah, but
I just
talk about a player of the game. Like
that we did the penalty shot and the game winner. So
yeah, and on a team where like she might be third banana on that team, like that tells you the strength of this team and how dangerous they were.
Yeah, maybe fourth. If you have Harvey.
Yeah.
I mean, Edwards, O'Brien. I mean,
Lacey Eden's like the best player on 30 teams in the country. At least, it's incredible.
Yeah. So congratulations to them. So big news that came out. Then if we talk about Brad Berry, and big coaching change. The Fire Berry crowd got what they wanted with him. The coaching search has opened up, and it closes in 2 days. So get your names and your resumes in quickly. I can pick up cones, and I know a hockey drill, so I could probably put my name in the hat, although I don't know how much consideration I'd get. But kind of initial thoughts. Brad Berry is axed. The alumni or the the vocal kind of get what they want. They've been chanting for Fire Barry as long as they've been chanting for Fire Hack, and now we are coachless in North Dakota, and I'm interested to hear when the portal opens up what's going to happen. But you can go into it in a coaching change, right? So maybe they can get into it now. I don't know.
Yes, you can. Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't matter too much because, again, I think it's open for if you're going to transfer to schools, like you can enter it now that the coach has left, but you just can't land with a new team, I think, until the portal opens for good next week. But yeah, that is definitely a rule of the portal, is that you can enter it if there was a coaching change. That would mean like after the 60-day window of the portal, if a coaching change takes place after that there was like an exemption that you can get back in the portal because of that.
That's right.
It won't really matter because of the timing of the news here. It was a little surprising that it was on a Sunday, like right after the women's title game. Usually we get these, like Monday is Black Monday for coaches. Usually if they're going to fire a coach, they usually wait till Monday. So I thought the timing was a little strange. I mentioned, it's both surprising, but also not very surprising. It's hard for me to put myself in the shoes of a North Dakota fan, and I want to get out of those shoes immediately if I'm going to put myself in those shoes. But I think they've got a point, the Fire Barry crowd, with the expectations that the program has, for him to miss the tournament as much as he did. I put a tweet that this was 3 out of the last 4 Fargo regionals where UND would be the host school of those regionals where they haven't made tournament. And I shortchanged him because I forgot that 2018 regional, that Air Force debacle regional, which I never want to revisit again. That was in Sioux Falls, but North Dakota hosted that one as well. So that means 4 out of the last, and North Dakota obviously was not at that regional either. So it's 4 out of the last 5 that they have hosted that they haven't been able to make the tournament field. And so, yes, he's won the other 4 years. So his first year, he wins the national title. He's got 4 Penrose Cups. But then those years that he didn't do those things, they didn't even make the tournament in any of those years. And so, and just one NCAA tournament win since winning the national title in his first year in 2016.
With Hackstall's guys.
With Hackstall's guys. So if this is a program that is natty or bust, which again, I think is a bad way to look at it based on the randomness of the NCAA tournament. But if that's what your mindset is, then this is probably overdue. I'll be really surprised based on who they hire. A lot of my analysis of this will be based on who they go with, because at this point, just knowing North Dakota and how they generally operate as kind of being we promote you in-house kind of hockey program. If I'm going to have a betting favorite right now in the clubhouse, I'd have to say Dane Jackson is odds on at this point, who's been Barry's number 1 assistant. Barry was Hackstall's number 1 assistant, and then he was promoted to the head coaching job once Hackstall bolted for the NHL. Jackson then bumped up to the number 1 assistant position. But that would be really weird if they did that. That would feel like a really lateral move. If you're going to just go with the next guy up, then why not just keep Barry in place? So I feel like if they're going to if they were going to fire Barry, it's to go with an entire new coaching staff, getting rid of the entire staff, and bringing some outsider in to the program. And again, not Hackstall. I'm shocked that his name led off Schlossman's list of 20 names that he threw out there in an article today.
I mean,
and apparently that's a serious candidate.
Which was literally throwing things out there. So I guess it makes
Brett Larson
sense.
included there, which I think is a 0% chance of even him getting contacted by North Dakota for that position. I don't think that's.
Yeah,
I
can
mean,
you
Matt
imagine what
Cullen
the North
was on
Dakota
that.
faithful would do with an 8th place finish? Yeah, let's get a coach after an 8th place finish.
But I wonder who they're going to get. Like Sandelin's name's been thrown out. I don't think that's a possibility.
Nope.
I think, and he's over 60.
I clearly already threw my one out there. I want Gwozdecki. I want George Gwozdecki behind the bench of North Dakota, even if it's for 1 or 2 years as a transition or something like. I mean, he's 71, so. But how much chaos would that be if you got Carl and Gwozdecki going against each other?
There's that. I don't know. Like
I want chaos.
We brought up in the past the house settlement, which deals with nil money and teams opting into larger scholarship limits and whatnot. North Dakota was somewhat notable a month or so ago where they announced that they were opting out of that for next year. Whereas all the other NCHC teams that have announced, CC announced that they're opting in, Duluth announced that they're opting in. There's some conference, like if you're a Power 4 conference like Arizona State, they're automatically, they have no choice. They have to opt in. But if you're these D2 schools or smaller D1 schools, or like St. Cloud, where you only play one D1 sport, you have the opportunity to opt in. I was a little surprised that Dakota opted out of that. So I'm wondering exactly what their financial situation is, meaning can they afford anyone they want? Like if Mike Hastings is not available, but I'm saying if a coach of Hastings' caliber, where Wisconsin scooped in and threw him a bag of money, are they even able to do that? Like throw a bag of money to Rand Pecknold? I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but based on their financials, I'm not sure if they're necessarily in that position to do that. But again, if you're not going to do that, make a splashy outside hire, I'm really not sure what firing Barry will do, especially if you're just going to give the job to his assistant. So a lot of my analysis would depend on what the next move is. I think these are combo moves. You fire a guy to replace a guy. But if you're just going to rinse and repeat with the same kind of guy, I'm not really sure what the change is. And I'll say, I don't really care. I am not a North Dakota fan, and I should root for them to make the wrong coaching move. So please bungle this, whatever you do. And if the bungling of the move was to fire Barry in the first place, even better.
Even better.
But I see where they're coming from, and I don't begrudge fans or programs to have high standards. And if they didn't feel that Barry was passing that standard, then all the power to him. I don't think it's crazy that they fired him. But it will be, I would think it'd be crazy if they just hired Jackson, if they just gave him the keys.
And that's the thing, is like, that makes the most sense based on history. But if history has gotten them where they are right now, which in their minds is not good enough. And I say that because you look at his overall record, and it's incredibly good, and his regular season performance is really good. And then randomness, you can point to a 5 overtime game where they weren't able, that the one and offs that they weren't able to, but it's, so you look at those types of situations. I look at it as like, I don't know how you fire them in all honesty. But yeah, like you said, they've got high standards, and if they want to keep those high standards, go right ahead. I do think that the college hockey game has elevated so much, and I think it's unreasonable to have some of those standards, but you know what? Go off, King. Go right ahead. I will give an honest pick of who I think, because I think Dane Jackson, like you said, would be more of the same. And I don't think that they're going to go that route. And I guess I don't know why I haven't seen his name, and maybe you can put a little more light on it. But there is a coach who has been highly regarded that doesn't have a team anymore, and that's Eric Lang. Now, I don't know if they would like it from AIC going to North Dakota, but you saw what he did with AIC. And the fact that AIC is just, dropped down to Division II, and now, you can't imagine that he's going to coach a Division II team, or I think that there is a coach there out in the waiting that I think actually would be a good fit to kind of take it over. And that's who would be my guess, is that a serious candidate to kind of look out for. And I was kind of amazed that Schlossman didn't even put his name on a list of the 20 candidates, but put out Matt Cullen and Jonathan Taves on the list.
Right.
So that surprised me, but that would be my pick. Is like, that would be the call I would want to make at this point.
He's definitely a good coach. From my perspective, I think he'd be making 2 jumps up on the rung. Like, I feel like he's going to make 1 jump up. Like, McMahon threw his name out there for the RPI coaching vacancy. That would make more sense for him to make a move from AIC to RPI. AIC to North Dakota, in college hockey standards, that's a big jump in terms of the amount of eyeballs that you have on you, the amount of pressure. Yeah. I think he's a good coach. He certainly could do the job, I bet, but I would be surprised if they went that route. But that might be the kind of home run that they need to make. Someone in that, and I bet they could afford him. I bet he wouldn't cost as much as a Pecknold of a coach on that level. So it's I'm glad you put the name out there. I like to hear some creative ideas like that. I did want to mention, I don't know if I'm going to make this a foot and mouth nominee, but I did see an article that was posted today by a guy named Mike McFeely. He's at the Inforum. I don't know how to pronounce that. It's the Fargo newspaper. He is like the Jim Suhan. I've read his stuff before. He is like the Suhan of Fargo, if you can make that comparison. So he's very much hot takey and provocative and kind of dumb. That's his sort of shtick. And his whole article, it really depends. Like, this is one quote: 1 NCAA tournament victory in 9 years. That can't be acceptable. It all comes down to he ain't winning in the NCAAs. There is a couple of points that I laughed at, like this one. In the end, it comes down to recruiting. UND was clearly passed in that category by league foes Denver and Western Michigan. How do Alex Bump and the Slukinski brothers, both from Minnesota, end up in Kalamazoo? Now, the Slukinskis are from Warroad, as he mentions, Bump from Prior Lake. Why does he think that North Dakota has first dibs on Minnesota players? Does he not know that there's several Minnesota teams? I get Warroad, that connection with North Dakota, but why should North Dakota fans be salty that they missed out on Alex Bump, who was originally committed to Vermont of all teams? Yeah. It's not like he was scooped up by Minnesota teams. So I some of that was kind of funny to read, but it all comes down to you're just not doing enough in that tournament. And this is the comeuppance that you get, but life comes at you fast when you're the head coach in Grand Forks and you win 1 NCAA tournament game in 9 years. Eric Lang, by the way, won as many NCAA tournament games in Fargo than Brad Berry did since 2017. So give him the job. I like your idea.
If I don't laugh, I cry.
I'm sorry I brought it up.
Yeah. So, but I mean, I don't know. I feel like no matter where you go with that fan base, at least half the fan base is going to be ticked off on.
I see this again. It is Twitter. It is the lowest common denominator, but Gopher fans are saying this. They're like mad about the Gophers probably going to lose in Fargo, and Motzko should be on the hot seat.
Well, they are, because
you gotta the NCAA tournament. You one team a year can win it, and it's 4 random games, random one-offs. Like you mentioned that Duluth, the 7 overtime game. People forget that was the year. So that was the year they beat AIC in their first round game to get to that game, the regional final against Duluth. But then Duluth didn't have to play a first round game because Michigan tested for COVID. So they wiped that game out. So Duluth was playing that game fresh. North Dakota was playing on that was less than 1 day of rest. That was one of the reasons that Motzko and Barry got together to get the day in between the regionals put into place. So, I mean, there's those kind of weird circumstances there. I bet if both teams are on even rest, I think Dakota wins that game, doesn't go to 5 overtimes. So weird stuff like that doesn't show up in box scores necessarily. The St. Cloud game in Fargo against AIC, we all know the ice conditions there. It's just these random events. Anything can happen in a 60-minute hockey game. And then you add in the other randomness that can occur in tournament games. It's just not a great gauge to analyze how the health of your hockey team. The thing with North Dakota, though, I think you can look at those other years that they crapped out, didn't make those tournaments. When you have all of the expectations coming into each of those years, I think that's enough to make this not a crazy move by Dakota. But again, I wish them the worst in their coaching search, and I really hope that they F this up.
Yeah, that's very true. Let's go to questions. DMTR Gaming, odds of ASU achieving another Foot and Mouth Award nomination. And Greg Powers has had a few that are definitely
high chance. We are waiting with bated breath for his his end of year coaches show.
Next we have the Husky statue, 55th in goals for, 16% power play, long breakout passes tipped into the ozone, resulting in icings and turnovers, reluctance to shuffle lineup, freshmen who can't backcheck a squirt, many goals against were wide open guys in the slot, only having 3 legit centers, questionable portal pickups of late. Who is to blame? I mean,
but other than that,
how was your trip to Dallas, Miss Kennedy? It's I mean, a lot of that definitely just kind of lies on the coaches, and so many of those issues are valid. And that's kind of where this portal is going to be really interesting to see kind of what shakes up from it and who ends up going, who they end up able to retain. But, I do still have faith in Larson and this coaching staff that this was just kind of a blip, and hopefully he learned a lot this season. And then we're able to kind of get back to the powerhouse that St. Cloud State can be. So it's, but definitely when I look at this, it's the coaching staff as a whole, to the Larson, to the assistants as well. It's, that some of these things were coachable mistakes and the fixable mistakes that you need to coach in, and just didn't happen this year.
Yeah. And like you said, I think we'll be able to more analyze it, more fully when we get portal movements, which will likely open next week. Typically, once that portal door opens, we get a lot of activity that first day. So hopefully, if we're going to be recording next Monday, we might have some updates in that regard. And that can help not only, like, if you want to go back to last week's show, we did a deep dive, half hour or so, babbling about what went wrong, kind of an autopsy of this year for the Huskies. And we'll do more, not so much an autopsy, but a look forward and how do you recover from this in weeks to come. And we're able to do that once we kind of know who's coming back and who you're losing, and then who you're bringing in as your recruits. We talked about Jackson Rudh. That's going to be a year or two in the future, but we'll talk about the ones that are coming next year, or at least projected to come next year. And that depends too on portal activity. And so, keep listening each week here as we're still doing weekly shows here through the Frozen Four. We'll keep you updated as far as how we're thinking the St. Cloud State team is looking at rebounding from this disastrous year.
Gage Astro, funniest hire North Dakota can make.
Don Lucia.
Oh man, that would be wonderful if they bring the Don in. I would love it.
Do you think that there's a dollar amount? Not that North Dakota can pay it, but do you think if you asked him, will Don Lucia, would Don Lucia take the job for $10 million a year?
Yes. 10 million? Yes.
Would he take it for $1 million a year?
Yes. I mean, like, what do you like? I think when they posted this position, the salary, it said based on experience, but was like 385.
We could probably find out what Barry was making.
Barry was making between 4 and 5.
Yeah, I'm Googling it here. I mean, this is AI, but a little bit short of $500,000.
Yeah.
And he had 1 year left, so he probably got a buyout from this too. So he's going to get paid for not coaching for a little bit.
Yeah. And that's what I find actually really interesting about that is that there was 1 more year left on his contract, and to make this decision, to yank him beforehand before having 1 more year where you don't have a buyout, I think is really telling too of how much of on the hot seat that he was prior to that, because I think that if he wasn't on the hot seat, you give him 1 more kind of a prove it year and then dangle a contract in front of him. But that
you found out he did not have a buyout?
No, I'm not saying that. But he had 1 more year in his contract.
Right. I'm wondering if they've got to pay that full $500,000.
I would imagine they do. He had a contract.
Again, if we're talking that McFeely article, that this is the Yankees of college hockey, and they got all these resources, and it's natty or bust every year. And so, I mean, money shouldn't be an issue. It should be no object for their coaching search. But yeah, if they're crimped in any way by the fact that they still have to pay Barry, that's another reason as far as why didn't they just play out his contract for 1 more year, especially if they go with someone in-house.
But which makes me think that if like the powers that be of the Board of Regents or whoever makes the decisions there at UND, looked at that and was like, we don't want to give him a chance to extend it. We don't want to give him a Frozen 4 and then we have to fire him after Frozen 4. If we're going to fire him, we got to do it now. So
that's a loser way to look at it. Yes, we want to get ahead of a potential good year next year.
Yes,
where we'd be stuck with him.
Where we'd be quote unquote stuck with him. So that I think that's.
Do you have Dave Haxtell's number? That's your next thought after that. I'm popping popcorn. This is going to be fun, I think.
Yeah. So I don't know if I could top Don Lucia because I had Gage Asmus as my funniest hire. But although Schwartz, I kind of made a little tongue-in-cheek reference to him as he was talking. He said the S word for Sioux hockey, and I'm like, you never wore that jersey, so you can't call it that. Even.
Which Schwartz was it? It's the Schwartz that there's been so many. It's not the one that still plays for them.
No.
Was it the one that played on the 16 team, their last national title team?
The Blues.
I don't really care all that much.
Jordan,
I saw it.
Or not Schwartz. I'm sorry, Schmaltz. Yeah, duh.
Schmaltz.
Sorry.
I knew what you were saying. Yeah. But yeah, I did see a lot of players of that era who won that title with him with glowing praise on his way out. So he must have been pretty well liked by the players. And I wouldn't be surprised. I guess I said like with the upside, I would assume North Dakota's got a good recruiting class coming in because they generally do. That's the one downside of like completely cleaning house, like firing Dane Jackson as well, because then you risk losing all the guys that you've got snapped up, plus guys like Boisvert who might be out the door anyway. But yeah, if you're going to completely gut the coaching staff, then all the high end guys that you've currently got on the roster might be a mass exodus there as well. So there's a delicate balance to be had when you're conducting the search. But it'll be interesting.
But other than Osmus, I would say Gwozdecki, who I said earlier. I think that would be a funny hire.
Lucia would be hilarious. And getting back
Lucia.
to the women's title game, could you imagine if Don Lucia was in that building and had some power? What would he have done when it comes down to the penalty shot?
The penalty
Just
shot?
that last minute, like the wheels are spinning in his brain at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And he's doing the rubbing the hands. Okay, I got a commission. Yeah. I'm a commissioner. I've really got a commission right now.
Yeah, exactly. Eric, who should SCSU fans be rooting for? Not own personal opinions, but as a fan base. You can go with just one answer or a handful, but as a fan base, who do you think? And then he's got his, but I'm not going to read it because I don't want to be influenced on his opinion.
This gets back. We've touched on this before, and it kind of dovetails with the UND. Like, I hope that they bungle this. Because I did see like, oh, Western. I'm rooting for Western. I root for no team in the NCHC.
Correct.
In the national tournament. I don't, and same goes with Mankato. And really, it's the Gophers #1. I would hate to see them win it. But I don't want to see Mankato win it either, and that's a direct effect.
I don't even hate seeing the Gophers win it. I would hate seeing Motzko win it.
Well, that's why I'm saying I would hate to see the Gophers win it. But Mankato too, and that's why I was rooting against them in 2022. That's a direct rival when it comes to recruiting players, especially in the state of Minnesota. Mm-hmm. If them even making a Frozen Four elevates their profile any more so than they would maybe be able to scoop up a Jackson Rudh in the future, I would root against that. So I know that does not sound good to a lot of Minnesota sports fans who they're rooting. I didn't even see on social media, why did they put both Minnesota teams in Fargo? Are they trying to cannibalize them? Jeez. I don't want to see them win. They are my direct rivals. I hate them. So I don't want them to win. So really, one of those Hockey East teams, sure, that really is no pain if I see UConn win it all. So go Huskies, woo.
I don't know. Like UConn, I would actually be like, that kind of sucks. Like any of those, like I don't know. I just feel like UConn is like more so that it could be us, and it's not. Type of thing. Whereas like a Boston College, it's not like Leonard is going to come here ever. But so
and you can if UConn wins it, you can lump that into the fluke bucket. Because they're just another one of the 6th overall seed. The fluke bucket.
I'm just like imagining a bunch of sardines or something in this bucket, this chum, like of just random hodgepodge of random natty title winners. It's like the fluke bucket.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, so that means
would you have all BC. 3 Duluth teams in there in the fluke bucket?
Yes. I mean, the 2019 team was the 2 overall seed. But they were still a fluke. I mean, it's Duluth, and they were vaulted to that by that game tying goal in the opening round against Bowling Green. The puck went off the Bowling Green defender's butt cheek and in. After that, after it rolled off the butt cheek, I knew that they were going to win. It was like, again, the rabbit's foot is back, and
the butt cheek goal.
I keep thinking about that. So because of the butt cheek goal, I lumped the 2019 into the fluke bucket.
Okay, fair enough. So, but I do agree with you. If it's not here, I want it furthest away. Yeah, anywhere.
It sounds like you're a big BC fan. So you'll make a lot of friends by picking BC.
Yeah, that's fine by me. But I do 100% agree. I never really fell okay with the conference pride aspect of it. Eric, just to his thoughts, I think you can't root for anyone from Allentown or Fargo. I don't think we root for any conference or teams that we're still bitter at. UMass, Quinnipiac. That's fair.
That's fair.
I also think you don't want other plans when it did first before us. I have it as BC, BU, Michigan State. The most, as it's not an Eastern bias, but it could upset some big teams. But I don't want Michigan or Minnesota, Wisconsin, PSU, even Michigan. So that's kind of his thoughts on that. But yeah, anyone we would like I could see us going up and be like a recruit being like, if I get to go to UConn or St. Cloud State. I could see that in my head. I can't see anyone saying, "Am I going to go to BC?"
Which recruit is down to those two schools?
Just as a grandiose. I'm not saying anyone in particular is, but I'm saying that type of player that is going a little more under the radar, that they're not a blue chip prospect, that we're not going to be in. I don't like having another notch. Against St. Cloud, or like that would lean one way away from St. Cloud State to some of those schools. I could see us being in a recruiting battle with UConn in the grand scheme of things, right? I can't see us being in a recruiting battle with,
that makes sense.
Yeah, so
I get what you're saying.
So that's all I'm saying. Well, that about does her. On another marathon podcast. We had a lot to talk about. I thought we kept it moving too. So if you didn't, well, that's what
knocked out a couple of commutes for you.
Exactly. So that about does her. So thank you guys so much for listening. I am Weldie at More Clappers, MOAR, More Clappers. Andrew, where can we find you?
Andrew, SCSUHHP. You can also email the show, Huskies Hockey Podcast at gmail.com. Send me an email or send me a tweet.
We'll be back next week recapping the regionals and a whole bunch of other stuff, as news probably will break about the portal too. So we'll get a lot of information here. We don't know a lot, but we're going to know a lot more in about a week. So until next time, go Huskies. Woo!